Hi, good morning. I'm Sean Griffin. This is a Morning Cup of Context. Thanks for joining me. I was reading the scriptures this morning in Numbers 5, and it talked about those who were unclean being kicked outside of the camp, being removed from the camp. So it got me thinking, and I was wondering if there's a deeper context here that we may be able to explore to see what it's really talking about. Many people, they just traditionally think that this passage is saying that anyone that was unclean for whatever reason was removed from all the people, all the rest of the people, and they were living. So imagine people in a desert area like the Israelites in the wilderness for 40 years. They're in camp together, but then anyone unclean, many people think that they were removed outside of the camp to another place. And they're right to think that because the scriptures there in Numbers, Numbers chapter 5, it seems to say that, right? So let's dig a little and let's see what it's saying and look at it real quick. Numbers 5, 1 through 3. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the sons of Israel that they send away from the camp every leper and everyone having a discharge, and everyone who is unclean because of a dead person. Ye shall send away both male and female. You shall send them outside the camp, so that they will not defile their camp where I dwell in their midst." Now, so the very idea that every time someone's unclean, because this was a periodic thing, people would become unclean for different reasons, and we're going to read the verses that talk about different reasons why people become unclean. And one's from sickness, one was from infection, another one was from natural processes that occur both in male and in female in the course of their life, seasonally, periodically, monthly even. And so many times people think that because they were unclean immediately, they were sent away because of Numbers chapter 5 verse that we just read. And so what do we do with that? Were they really sent away the entire time? Was there really a group of people hanging out outside of the camp at all times during that 40 years, and also as a state of Israel as a nation? What would that look like?
Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yes. Would we have time for that? I don't know. Let's dig a little bit deeper and let's figure out exactly what the context may be for that. Leviticus 15, verse 1 through 3. The Lord also spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. This, moreover, shall be his uncleanness and his discharge. It is his uncleanness, whether his body allows its discharge to flow or whether his body obstructs his discharge." Then we go down a little further, in verses 19 to 20. It says, "When a woman has a discharge, if her discharge is her blood, in her body is blood, she shall continue in her menstrual impurity for 7 days. Whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything also on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean, and everything on which she lies, it shall be clean. It shall be unclean." Verse 24 says, "If a man actually lies with her so that her menstrual impurity is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean." All right, so I just want to take a quick moment here because we just went through 24 verses really quick, and each, I had to kind of paraphrase the whole segment of Leviticus, 1 through Leviticus 15, 1 through 24. But it's addressing different people, those who are lepers, those who have sickness, those men and women in the different times, as I just said. And the idea here is, unfortunately, many people, when they start learning the ideas that God's commandments are still relevant for today. And yes, even the commandments I'm reading right now. In fact, these commandments that we just read in Leviticus 15 is a foundational basis for our medical system, right? Basic hygiene, cleanliness, making sure that we want to stop the spread of disease to other people. And it's a sense of quarantine, if you will. But also it's just understanding how to handle bodily fluids because those are a natural process of life. And unfortunately, many times when people come into the understanding that God's commandments are relevant for today, and they are still instructed for us, because they've heard different things growing up, just as I kind of gleaned from different church teachings growing up, here in the United States, that there were apparently that we just walk in love with Jesus, but you don't have to actually do all these commandments that are listed out through Genesis through Deuteronomy. And so a lot of folks have been coming to the realization that that's not entirely accurate, that these commandments are applicable to today. They're very much so. But many times when people come into this mindset and they realize, or they even start to investigate the idea in the scriptures, are these commandments still relevant and applicable for us today? The first thing they make a joke about, and sometimes they're not even joking, is they say, well, does that mean I just got to send my wife out, outside of the house every time she has a period? No, that's not what it's, and this is the misconception we hope to address today. All right, so let's look at Leviticus 15 and verse 31. And this is following up with all the different types of uncleanness we just read. And it says, thus you shall keep the sons of Israel separated from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in their uncleanness by their defiling my tabernacle that is among them. Wow, it seems pretty bad. It seems like he's still saying, keep them separated from everybody else. But let's look quickly. In this verse, we have some context, okay? It says that they will not die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle. Now, the tabernacle was very important, guys. It was, the place where God's presence could dwell, the tent of meeting. It was where the Ark of the Covenant was. This is where they did sacrifices. It was considered to be a holy place, right? A set-apart place. And in that place, there could not be anything unclean. And so, if the priests were doing their instructions wrong, or if they came in and they were unclean and tried to perform their priestly duties, depends on the circumstances, and in some of those circumstances, they could actually die. And if any of the regular people came forward to the tent of meeting, to the tabernacle, right, to the doorway to the tent of meeting to try to offer their sacrifice to the priest, and if they were unclean, there could be harsh penalties, right, even death, as the verse talks about. So let's look at Numbers 5 again, and let's ask: were women really kicked out of the camp? I mean, that's important for us to really discern here. Numbers 5, I just highlighted the word the camp. So let's look that up. In the Hebrew, it's a very unique word. It's hamachana, right? Sounds like I just sneezed or something. But basically, in Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, machana says it's an encampment or a camp, right? So, but let's look at the actual definition given in a multiple of other words, right? This is our thesaurus, if you will. It's talking about an army, a band, a battle, a camp, a company, a drove, a host, tents. It's from the root word kana, right? We're going to look at that in a minute. It's an encampment of travelers or troops, hence an army, whether literal or figurative. And in the figurative aspects, it even for some strange reason, which our context affirms that this is correct, but it includes in a figurative example that it's even the sacred courts. All right, and also continues to say again, it's an army, a band, a battle, camp, a company, a drove, a host, tents. So this is, all of these words do not connect to just regular people encamped around each other, right? Not pitching a tent, not throwing down stakes to set up and camp with each other. This is talking specifically in the context of an embattlement, an army, or even courts, right? Sacred courts. So this is a special place. So how would this make sense, right? So let's look at Leviticus 15:31 again. The camp wasn't just the people, right? This camp idea, it says, thus you shall keep the sons of Israel separated from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is among them. So the point of this is that when God's presence showed up, if there was uncleanness, the uncleanness perished. Okay? So if a person was unclean, whether a priest or regular person, they try to get near the presence of the Lord, when he showed up at his tabernacle, where was designed to harness his power for the people, for the priest to come and do sacrifices for atonement and everything, if they were unclean, the unclean lost that encounter, okay? So the same thing with the army. Now when the army went out in Israel to fight, they would take the Ark of the Covenant with them, okay? That was supposedly, at the time, encapsulating the presence and the power of God. So that was him dwelling among them in that small moment as they took him from the actual courts of the tabernacle, and then they took him out to battle with him to give them favor in battle. So again, you don't want to have someone that has a discharge of uncleanness, or a leper, or someone that's got an infection of some sort that could be contagious while they're with the army that has the Ark of the Presence with them in the army, right? So now we understand the background of this Hebrew word and the greater context. So whether they're in the courts of the tabernacle or whether they're in the army where the Ark of the Covenant would have been traveling with them, you got to keep away from all the uncleanness from that. But you don't just put the people themselves outside of the camp, right? You don't isolate the people. And that's why if you look at all of Leviticus 15, where it introduces the idea of being unclean and having to treat different types of being unclean, whether natural or unnatural, nowhere in any of those descriptions, as its first mention of a concept, nowhere does it tell the Israelites to make sure these people are kicked out of camp for a while. No. They, in fact, when we read earlier about the husband lying with the wife while she's on her menstrual period, that means they're together, and there's a possibility for them. So the husband didn't go outside the camp either. No, she didn't leave the camp. She stayed in the camp. And it talks about other things, and when she sits on stuff, it may become unclean. You know, there was precautions taken, right? And if he actually lies with her during that time period, then he's unclean for a time. But they don't both leave the camp, right? They're inside with the people. That was part of their protection as well. So this is the greater understanding here. It's kind of a common misconception that people think that, oh, they're unclean, they're just kicked out of the camp and isolated from their main group of community, which also included their protection, and that's not accurate at all. So here's a quick example of the actual tabernacle, okay? So this is some ideas for just showing that it's a basic sketch, just showing the most holy, the holy, and then the courts, right? And this court again is in the outer area, right? And so this is, remember what we read the definition of the word used in Numbers 5 for camp. One of the variant alternate words was speaking figuratively of the outer courts, right? To remove them from the camp / the army, if the Ark of the Covenant's with them, or / if they're coming up to the tent of meeting, to the outer courts, right, where they would offer their sacrifices at different times of the year, the appointed times, the daily, the Sabbath, or whatever they were involved in at the time. So this is just a quick understanding, just to give you a layout of what it's mentioning, because they viewed the tabernacle, right, where his presence was. They viewed this as a precious place. It was their chance to get as close as possible to the Creator and atone for their uncleanness, for their unrighteousness, to draw in, to listen to the instruction of the priests, to become more righteous, to learn better the commandments, so that they could become more set apart, become more like God intended them to be originally before sin crept in. So this is a very precious thing to them, to be able to come up to the court and make sure that it was undefiled. All right. Could this be why Psalm 84:10 is so powerful? Right? Because the psalmist says, better is one day in your courts than 1,000 outside. I would rather stand at the threshold of my God, I'd rather stand at the threshold of the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. Wow. Okay, guys, I just want to encourage you that they valued community. There were rules for the uncleanness and what was going on there. Nobody was removed from camp. It was just being kept away from where it would be a danger to you if you were to get close to the presence of God. And so I hope that helps, and I appreciate you joining me this morning. If you want to see more videos like this, just like it and share it. Also go over to my YouTube page and subscribe at Kingdom of Context. And I appreciate you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.